Welcome back to another Kicking Tables. Today we'd like to welcome Sam Cristall and Tyler Holman, the creators of Dice Command. And Tyler, you're also the illustrator of the game.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
So why don't we
Hey, thanks so
give
much.
you a chance, first of all, to tell us what is Dice Command? Give us the elevator pitch of Dice Command.
Sam, I'll defer to you.
Sure. So Dice Command is a tight, fast-paced, intense World War II themed semi-abstract war game.
That's a
Um,
lot of adverbs.
yes.
The more the better,
so
right?
Of course.
you've got a bit of dice rolling, a bit of worker placement, um, some strategic combat movement, that sort of stuff, and it plays quick and fast, and yeah.
So what's the origin story for this game? How did this come about? What was the inspiration for you guys to make this?
So we were originally working on another game, a little more ambitious, a little bigger, and it was going okay. And we kind of had the idea for this one just like in our back pocket a little bit. And then once you know, the world went to how it has currently been for a
Yeah.
little bit, we decided to shelf the bigger, more ambitious project for the time being and focus on this smaller project. It just started off. I kind of just had a random idea for. I'm like, what kind of a game can we get out there that is super small, uses basic components, but still offers like some that tactical or heavy feel, or it kind of scratches that itch,
Hmm.
almost like a chess game, right? Like abstract sort of feel. Um, so yeah, it was originally just like a grid and dice, and just had some made up rules to go with it. And then Sam was like, "Yeah, that's cool, but we can't just sell dice and a grid." And I was like, "That totally makes sense." And then kind of brought in some cards, started playing around with a few more mechanics here and there. And then, yeah, him and I just decided to focus fully on this one and just shelf the other one for the time being. And eventually, we struggled with the theme a little bit because I know not a lot of people are into the war sort of themes every once in a while, but I think it really lends itself to
Hmm.
the mechanics and how the game plays. That we're like we can't really ignore it. It works too good with the game,
Right. So why
and
don't
yeah,
you
it's just evolved.
So why don't you give us that brief overview of how the game plays then? So it's a World War II battlefield, but how do you use your dice and what are the cards? Tell us a bit how the game plays.
Yeah, so you start the game, like you start your turn, you roll your dice, but they are your units. So yeah, you have a barracks, which is where you can hold all your available units, your in-game money, your credits, and if you acquire any research tokens. So you can keep all of this in your barracks. But yeah, you start your turn, you roll your available units, and then you can start assigning them to particular actions that you want to take on your turn. Kind of like you're pre-programming, but this is like the worker placement aspect to it.
Okay.
Uh, so some of the units are getting deployed into the field, and some of them are just giving the actions and returning back to your barracks. So that's kind of the action economy aspect to it. You can get a really strong force out on the field, but then now your action economy on your consecutive turns is going to dwindle a little bit
Okay.
unless you assign more units to, make more money for you, and then spend that money to conscript more units into your barracks. So there's that constant sort of engine you got to keep going.
Okay, that's very cool. Now, the game is 2 to 4 players, is that correct?
It is. We are currently working on our three-player version because it'll be a little bit different than
Yes.
the 2 or 4 player.
Okay, so tell us how the game differs between 2, 3, and 4 players.
Sam, you want to jump on that?
Sure. Yeah. So two and four players are the very natural thing. It's a sort of square grid-based movement, so it's very symmetric, um, and lends itself well to to those styles. So in the 4 player is a 2v2 format originally.
Oh, okay.
You've got teams. We bring in sort of an aspect of alliance. So you're fighting. It's a tug of the game is very tug of war-y. So when you're fighting in the 1 versus 1 and the 2 versus 2 modes, you're very much sort of pushing and they're pushing and you're trying to get past each other. So in order to do 3-player, we also wanted to introduce free for all because some people when they play war games they don't want to play with their teammate. So
everyone just wants to kill Tico. I get it.
I
Yeah.
get that. I get it a lot. It's okay.
We've had that, right? You're like they're like 2v2 is cool, but I really want to kill this guy, so I need a format like that.
That's right.
And we need really a 3-player format because there's a lot of groups out there that have 3 players. So the free for all actually sort of has people coming in from all sides, and we sort of have come up with a balance to help that out. But we're still working on a couple minor balance tweaks, but that's sort of the last piece of the puzzle.
That's awesome. Very cool. So it does become a different game than the traditional game when you add 3 players in.
The core gameplay loop is identical. The board is a little bit more open because there's more players sort of fighting for sort of a center control thing. But ultimately, your core gameplay loop, everything you do, also the viability of the various strategies, we're keeping that all the same. So if you've played the 1 versus 1 or the 2 versus 2 or the free for all, they should all feel very much the same.
Very much the same. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So with such a fast-paced game with so many different strategies that can be implemented, I want to know what are some of your go-to moves and strategies for winning during your playtesting?
I mean, I'll jump in first because I've played the game over like I don't know 120 times in the last couple months. So a decent strategy that I like to use. It's not like too crazy, but it's got a couple like technical moves in it. Like you don't start with any research on turn 1, so it's always a good idea just to like kind of build your ranks as much as you can. So conscript as many units as you can. Try and generate as many credits as you can, as well as if you're able to get some research and maybe get 1 unit on the board. If you can get light infantry on the board because they can move a little bit quicker, then you can start advancing down the field a little bit faster as well. So a move I like to do is get a light infantry. If I rolled a 3, that's perfect because it's like the best light infantry. So I'll get the light infantry on the board and I'll advance it to one of the facility locations as fast as I can. And in 2-player and as well as 4-player, it'll pretty much work the same way. But once it's there, I can now advance it again. So I'll deploy a unit directly behind it, and then I'll advance it diagonal 2 spaces. And then I can drop another unit right behind that. So now I control 2 facilities, and then I still have a really fast one that's still putting the pressure on them. Then they have to deal with that before they can even get around to dealing with the facilities.
It gets them on the defensive real quick.
Exactly, and it gives me at least 1 turn to get the benefits out of those facilities because they're usually heavily contested throughout the game. And by doing it that way, I'll at least like get to use one of them for at least 1 turn.
Awesome,
cool.
And Sam, what about you? What's your go-to strategy?
So I like to sort of thread the needle of taking a little bit too long to build up my engine. So inevitably, Tyler's, on my doorstep with a pile of guys, and I'm like, okay, it's time probably to stop this from killing me. I love, big, we've got some, I really love going for big money builds, right? Where I've just got all these resources so that when we do start engaging on the battle, I'm just throwing countless units at them. If you go too early, you can end up sort of running dry, right? Like your resources get spent very quickly and my army's just dying and we're not accomplishing anything. And like you said, our strategies play pretty well into each other because he'll establish that sort of early position, and I'll go for sort of a little bit more of a late game sort of thing.
Right.
And it's usually pretty close. I think Tyler's got a slight edge on me in win rate, but it's pretty back and forth.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I was watching Hungry Gamer's review of your game, and he mentioned that he has seen many different scenarios, different strategies still win the game. He said he's won the game by doing a lot of research. He's also won the game by doing no research at all. Was it important to you to create a game that balanced where all these different strategies could be deployed and still winnable and still be winnable? And how difficult was it to make that balance?
Yeah, it was partly natural. So we came at it sort of with I play a bit of a Magic, so I came at it sort of with the sort of trinity of what players are looking for. You've got your players who want sort of that big that early rush of I'm just gonna go and just go for the win.
Right.
You've got sort of maybe more of that mid-game build where, I'm going to build up a little bit and build sort of an army that's strong and has hardy units. And once we fight on the field, I'm going to win. And then you also need that third type. In early versions of the game, we found actually that it could kind of drag on in this sort of, you have this tug of war where the units are killing each other, and neither of you really making any progress. So what we needed sort of an alternate win condition, and that's where we went with. If you collect enough research, you actually get to a nuclear war step. Ooh. Where you just go over the top and you win.
Oh,
so you can actually win straight with research.
Thematically, it's atomic, not nuclear.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So you have sort of these three strategies budding for each of them, and once we had those in place, we just wanted to make sure that each of those sort of had a chance at winning. With the game being as quick as it is, it's actually been a bit of a pleasure to balance because we can hammer out a bunch of games.
Right.
Be like, okay, this is like a minor number here, a minor number there. We get exactly the sort of that razor thin balance that we want. And yeah, that's sort of been our goal anyway, right from the start.
That's excellent. Yeah, that sounds like perfectly balanced game. Sometimes is hard to find, and then the fact that you've balanced it, with many different strategies, and yet every strategy could still win. That's absolutely fantastic. Kudos to you guys for developing that way.
Thank you. Yeah, like Sam said, we had the aggressive style, the mid game, and then the long game, and we're like, all right, let's try to lean into those three, and then throughout the game, you can always change it up and have any combo. But yeah, like I'll like to go aggressive off the start, and then maybe play the long game while they're like slowly trying to march back down. Right.
And then get that atomic bomb over their heads.
Yeah, exactly.
That must be quite the move. Is that a difficult one to do? Is that sort of like the ultimate move to get that atomic bomb working?
So you have to do it twice. The first time it costs you like 5 research, essentially to launch the first one, which will allow you to get half of the win condition. And then to do it a second time will cost you 3 research. So it is a little bit easier and quicker. So if a player does get that first one off, that second one is not very far behind.
Okay.
But usually you're right on their doorstep, and if you can put enough pressure on them, it's really hard to get that second one off. Because all you need is to get your units or dice like right behind their enemy line. So even if you have like a 1 or just like a bunch of 1s and 2s on their front line, those can still win the game. So the other player is forced to get rid of them, which means they can't allocate their units to get more research.
Right.
Okay, nice fine balance there.
Yeah.
So post Kickstarter campaign, clearly this sounds fantastic, so we know it's going to fund. What's going to happen if somebody is watching this later and they've missed your campaign? How are they going to get a copy of this game if they've missed the campaign?
We plan on selling directly from our own site. this is a long-term thing for us.
Okay.
This game, like Tyler said, this game was sort of bred out of we were working on a bigger game. Then we created this very much as a sort of a taste of what we can do. So this game's going to go up on our site as an item. I'm not exactly sure what sort of commerce. It doesn't really matter. You'll be able to buy it through our website.
Obviously, if shows are back on again, then we'll be attending a lot more shows and expos.
Yeah.
And we'll have it with us there.
Awesome. So the long term, that's great. You still purchase it even if you miss the campaign. Do you want to tell us a bit about your campaign? Do you have any stretch goals you want to share, or are they all secret right now?
I guess not really secret. We do have sort of a modular mini expansion type of deal that's going to be a stretch goal right off the bat. So so we have sort of this little mini modular expansion type deal that just adds a little bit of asymmetry to the players and a little bit of replayability. So that's sort of our big one. We also have a few component type upgrades and that sort of stuff. That's all we can really share for now.
That's fine. So the Kickstarter goes live end of this month, hopefully. I know, Tyler, you're saying earlier that you're targeting September 29th, but that's not set in stone yet. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Yeah, I mean, it sounds awesome. I love you said earlier, Tyler, that you weren't sure about the World War II theme, because there's not a lot of, these days anyway, there's not a lot of World War II games out there, and maybe this is the resurgence. Maybe you guys bring it back. So
I love the theme. Honestly. I think the art and the theme absolutely blend perfectly for this.
You know what? If Call of Duty says anything about it, then everyone loves World War II. So, I think you might be hitting on something here. So, gentlemen, congratulations on bringing it to Kickstarter. It sounds great, and we wish you all the best on that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Kicking Tables.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Dice Command is a semi-abstract tactical wargame for 2 or 4 players. Players use units, represented by standard 6-sided dice, to perform actions, collect resources, and fight on the battlefield. The objective is to build up your army, combat your opponent, and run your units behind enemy lines.